Theon waited ahead, flanked by advisors. He wore a ceremonial jacket trimmed in silver, and his expression was polished pride. As she approached, he offered his arm. She laid trembling fingers on porcelain-smooth fabric. "You look magnificent," he murmured. "Remember, every gaze is currency." She managed a nod, focusing on the runner so her footsteps remained steady. Within moments they reached a dais beneath a tiered crescent of candles. An elder officiant, hair white, robes gray, lifted a polished staff and spoke words about unity, strength, and the sanctity of alliances. Seraphina heard them distantly, like echoes in a vaulted church, while her heartbeat drummed louder than any oath. Theon addressed the assembly. His speech flowed with practiced ease. Tributes to the visiting alphas, nods to ancient traditions, praise for their progressive alliance. He spoke of Seraphina as his guiding moon, a beacon of grace, the promise of renewal. The words felt foreign on her skin, but she stood unmoving, expression serene. At the proper moment, Theon turned and lifted the crown from its velvet cradle. He placed it upon her head with theatrical gentleness, then kissed her knuckles before the throng. Applause rose, orchestrated yet thunderous. Theon motioned for her to speak. Seraphina stepped forward. The candles flickered, casting halos. She scanned the sea of faces, some curious, some calculating, some blank. She thought of her mother's lullabies, of nights hiding in the woods nursing bruises, of the little girl who had once danced under lanterns. She inhaled, letting the scent of roses and polished silver fill her lungs. "Thank you," she began, voice clear but soft. "Today is a day of promises. Some promises feel heavy, others light. I have carried heavy silence for many years. Silence can crush, or it can carve space for something new. Today I vow to fill that space with purpose. I will rise for those who cannot lift their own heads, speak for those whose words have been taken, and stand beside my alpha to build a house where no voice is forgotten. In rising, we lift others. In unity, we find strength." The hall hushed. She felt the hush travel through bodies like a shared breath. Something in her chest expanded, surprised at its own courage. When she finished, the applause that followed held a raw note of respect she had never felt aimed at her before. She turned her head subtly, scanning the upper level, her gaze locked with a pair of golden eyes. Anthony stood behind a carved balustrade, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. But she felt it, an invisible tether snapping taut between them. A current surged through her veins, hot and unstoppable. Her knees nearly buckled. Inside her mind, where silence had reigned, a pulse of wild heat thundered once. She swayed. Cassandra, stationed nearby, took an imperceptible step forward in case she fell. Anthony's eyes widened fractionally as if he heard the same thunder. His lips parted. For a heartbeat, the crowded ballroom fell away. She saw only him, felt only the thrum of something ancient, binding, undeniable. Then the Lycan king turned sharply and strode from the gallery. The golden gaze vanished. Gasps rippled among the observers who noticed his abrupt departure. Theon's fingers tightened around her waist. Beneath the applause, his voice carried, silked with menace. "What did you do?" "Nothing," she whispered, pulse racing. "Don't lie to me," he hissed, face frozen in a host smile for the crowd. "We'll discuss this backstage." The ceremony concluded in a blur of formalities. Seraphina smiled, accepted compliments, bowed her head. Inside, her thoughts spun like leaves in a storm. What had she felt? Why did it hurt and soothe in the same breath? The warmth in her chest pulsed again, stronger, and suddenly the silence where her wolf dwelled rippled with the impression of a heartbeat not her own. She stumbled slightly, catching herself. A guard announced intermission. Musicians began a waltz for mingling guests. Theon guided her through a side door behind the dais, his grip iron. They entered a corridor lined with velvet drapes. The moment the door shut, Theon shoved her against the wall. The impact jarred her, crown tilting. "You embarrassed me," he seethed, every syllable coated in ice. "The Lycan king left during your moment. Do you understand the optics?" "I did nothing," she repeated, voice shaking. "I looked at him, that's all." "You looked at him like you'd discovered a god?" His eyes blazed. "And he looked at you like he wanted to claim what's mine." The accusation stole her breath. "I don't know what happened, I swear." Footsteps approached. Theon released her and stepped back as Cassandra rounded the corner. "Guess await the first dance," Cassandra said, eyes flicking between them. Theon slipped a mask of composure over his fury. "We will return shortly." He offered Seraphina his arm again. She took it, fingers numb, and allowed him to lead her back toward the music, though every step felt heavier than the last. The waltz drifted through the ballroom like fog over water, porcelain smooth yet chilling. Seraphina stepped onto the dance floor with Theon, her palm resting in his gloved hand, her free hand poised on his shoulder. The gown's heavy skirt swished against polished marble as he guided her into the first sweeping turn. From a distance, they must have looked regal, perfectly synchronized. Up close, tension vibrated in the scant space between their bodies. "Smile," he whispered, jaw tight. "The photographers are everywhere." Seraphina forced her lips upward. Her cheeks felt frozen despite the heat of chandeliers. On the edge of the floor, dignitaries conversed in tight clusters. A camera drone hovered near the ceiling, its faint whir overshadowed by strings and piano. With each pivot, she caught flashes of faces, Lunas comparing gowns, betas discussing finance, two alphas throwing envious glances at Theon's alliance trophy. Theon's fingers pressed into her waist at every swirl, a subtle reminder of ownership. "You'll introduce yourself to High Alpha Rourke after this dance," he murmured as they glided. "Mention your philanthropic wing. Impress him. His timber roots would triple our supply lines." She nodded once, counting the steps. The grand hall blurred around her, colors smeared by motion. Still, she searched unconsciously for a figure who was no longer present. The moment her gaze flicked toward the balcony where Anthony had stood, Theon jerked her closer. "Focus." He growled so low no one else could hear. "I'm listening," she said. She kept her eyes on him for the rest of the dance, though her pulse beat at an erratic tempo. The waltz ended, applause scattering like bird wings. Theon released her hand to bow. She curtsied with practiced grace. As couples dispersed, he guided her toward High Alpha Rourke, a broad-chested man whose dark mustache curled like a villain in an old movie. Rourke's Luna stood nearby in an emerald gown, eyes bright with curiosity. "High Alpha Rourke," Theon said smoothly. "Allow me to present my Luna, Seraphina of Ashwood, now of Bloodthorn." Rourke's gaze roved over Seraphina appraisingly. "A pleasure," he rumbled, voice thick as pine resin. "You honor us with your poise, Lady Seraphina." "Thank you." She inclined her head. "I've heard your territory boasts deep forests. Bloodthorn's new charity wing could use sustainable timber partners for building clinics." Rourke's eyebrows lifted, clearly impressed she came prepared. "Ambitious. We might discuss terms." His Luna stepped in, offering Seraphina a genuine smile. They exchanged a soft greeting, but Theon cut the conversation short with a polite nod. Already scanning the room for the next contact. They moved from group to group. Alpha Shreya of the Northern Glades, Lord Jared of the Silver Coast, Luna Mirei of Riverfang, who complimented Seraphina's pearls, then whispered, "You look brave." Theon's confidence grew with every handshake, but under his polished surface simmered a wary edge. Whenever someone mentioned Anthony's abrupt exit, did the Lycan king fall ill? Perhaps urgent business? Theon's jaw twitched. Between introductions, Seraphina caught snippets of gossip. "I heard the Lycan king's wolf surfaced without warning. Maybe Bloodthorn's wine was too strong. But did you see his eyes when he looked at the new Luna? Like the moon struck him." Whispers flickered at the edges of her awareness, fanning the flicker inside her chest into a nervous flame. Her wolf stirred again, a twitch of muscle just beneath her skin, a silent thump like a hand against glass. The sensation shocked her so suddenly she missed a beat in conversation, nearly dropping her champagne flute. Cassandra materialized at her side, steadying the glass. "Breathe," she mouthed. Theon didn't notice. He was busy charming a shipping magnate. Cassandra's discreet presence became a lifeline. She guided Serafina toward a side table laden with canapes, shielding her from prying eyes while she recovered. "Drink water," Cassandra murmured, pressing a crystal tumbler into her hands. Serafina sipped, grateful for the coolness. "Something's wrong with me," she whispered. "Or something's finally waking," Cassandra replied. "Your eyes keep flashing silver at the edges. No one else has noticed yet. Keep calm." Silver, the color of a wolf's eyes in mid-shift. A dizzy tremor fluttered behind Serafina's sternum. She focused on the rhythmic clink of cutlery, the swell of violins, grounding herself in details. Another waltz began. Guests returned to the floor in pairs. Theon reappeared at her elbow. "We dance again. The photographer missed the perfect shot earlier." His smile froze when he saw the water. "Don't ruin your makeup with sweat." "That depends on how vigorous the steps are," she said lightly, but tension threaded through her words. He guided her back under the chandeliers. This time movement felt different. The melody spun them through a pattern she barely followed. Her skin prickled, senses sharpening. She could hear the precise exhale of each musician. She could smell the underlying musk of wolfsbane perfume on a passing Luna. She felt Theon's heartbeat where his palm lay against her spine, steady but quickening whenever their gazes met. Mid-turn, her eyes lifted instinctively to the balcony. Anthony still wasn't there, but the space where he had stood felt weighted, charged. She stumbled. Theon's grip tightened, nails biting through satin. "Control yourself," he hissed at her ear. "You're Luna now, act like it." She righted herself, forcing rhythm back into her limbs. Around them couples twirled, gowns fanning like captured moons. And yet Serafina felt miles from glamour, anchored to an invisible line tugging her somewhere else, toward a pulse she couldn't locate. Her wolf pounded once more, a muted drum. She inhaled sharply. The waltz concluded. Applause blossomed again. Theon bowed, but his smile felt brittle. Before she could gather breath, a steward approached, murmuring something that made Theon's eyes narrow. "What do you mean he requests an audience later?" Theon demanded. The steward bowed deeply. "The Lycan King's Beta delivered the message, Alpha. His Majesty requests a private discussion about this alliance, tonight." Theon's hand on Serafina's waist turned vice-like. "Inform him I will set the time. I will not be summoned like a subordinate." The steward blanched. He implied, "Urgency, sir." Theon's jaw flexed. "Very well. Midnight in my strategy chamber, and no one else but his beta. Go." The steward hurried off. Theon faced Serafina, fury masked only by necessity. "Change into something more modest after the reception. You'll attend." "Midnight?" She tried to keep her tone neutral. "Will the guests not notice our absence?" "I'll manage the guests. Your job is to stand silent and look reverent." He scanned her face. "And whatever happened between you and that king ends tonight." "He's a stranger." Her voice shook. "I don't understand any of this." His eyes hardened. "Then try harder." Cassandra arrived, announcing dinner service. Theon smoothed his expression and escorted Serafina to the head table. Long courses arrived. Herb-crusted lamb, truffle risotto, delicate towers of glazed vegetables. She tasted none of it. Conversation ebbed and flowed around them. Commerce, territory disputes, wedding speculation. Yet each syllable passed through her ears as meaningless noise. She kept her back straight, cutting lamb into perfect bites she never ate, smiling on cue. At times Theon's thigh brushed hers under the table, a silent warning. Once, she felt Cassandra's shoe tap hers gently. A coded check-in. Serafina exhaled, sipping water. The taste of jasmine lingered from earlier tea, a reminder that comfort was a subtle rebellion. Dessert arrived. Spun sugar roses perched on molten chocolate cake. The room shimmered beneath chandeliers. At the opposite end of the table, Rourke's Luna laughed at something her mate whispered. The sound felt remote, like bird song beyond stone walls. Finally, Theon rose, glass in hand. "Friends," he called, voice mellow yet ringing. "Your presence here seals a future of shared prosperity. As we toast to alliances strong as steel, I promise that Bloodthorn will guard our bonds with vigilance." Guests lifted flutes. Seraphina mirrored them, though champagne fizzed noiselessly in her ears. Theon turned to her for the ceremonial kiss. He brushed lips against her cheek, a public show of tenderness. Cameras flashed, and when guests dispersed to lounge areas stocked with cigars and cognac, Theon gripped her elbow. "You'll greet the delegation from Ravenstone now." His gaze locked on hers, daring defiance. She nodded, aware rebellion would only hurt innocent staff later. They walked toward a cluster of tall men in gray suits. Conversation resumed. Timber contracts, security drones, border regulations. Plastering a serene expression, Seraphina navigated small talk, internal voice screaming for quiet. At last, the reception wound down. Guests trickled out under starry sky, chauffeurs guiding them to sleek vehicles. Musicians packed instruments, servers doused flickering candles. Cassandra approached. "Your quarters await," she said gently. "Not yet," Theon cut in. "She will change and meet me in the strategy chamber by midnight." Cassandra's eyes flickered with concern. "Of course, I'll accompany her." They stepped aside as two janitors swept confetti from marble. Quiet descended. Theon strode off to speak with his beta. Cassandra guided Seraphina along a silent corridor, guards a respectful distance behind. "Are you steady?" Cassandra asked under her breath. "No," Seraphina admitted, "but I'll manage." In her suite, Cassandra removed the crown, unpinned hair, helped slip the heavy gown off aching shoulders. She laid out a new ensemble, a simple floor-length dress of midnight blue silk, high collar, long sleeves, modest, elegant, defensive. Seraphina changed, wincing as fabric brushed the bruise hidden by makeup. Cassandra met her gaze in the mirror. "Midnight meetings rarely bode well. I'll stay outside the room." "Thank you." Seraphina smoothed the dress, though her hands trembled. "Did you see Anthony after he left?" "I didn't," Cassandra said. "But I spoke with the head of his guard. They said he retired to a private lounge. No one has gone in or out." "Did he ask about me?" "No." Cassandra hesitated. But his guard noted he seemed unsettled. The word lodged in Seraphina's ribs, unsettled. I'm not the only one. At 11:45 they left for the strategy chamber, a room deep within the fortress. The corridor was dimly lit, lined with framed maps. Guards outside the chamber saluted Theon when he arrived moments later. Seraphina smelled his cologne before she saw him, sharp, forested, laced with the faintest metallic edge. Tension hung off him like frost. "Remember," he murmured, eyes narrowed. Silence. Doors opened. The chamber was expansive, dominated by a holographic map table glowing blue. Anthony stood at the opposite side, cloak removed, suit jacket unbuttoned. His beta, a lean wolf with ash-blonde hair, hovered near a projection console. When Anthony turned toward them, candle sconces flickered, sending shadows skittering over his face. Theon forced a diplomatic smile. "Your Majesty, I trust your evening as well." Anthony's eyes brushed over Theon, then fixed on Seraphina. Heat punched through space. Her knees weakened. She caught a breath. That invisible tether pulled tight, sending a pulse of recognition down her spine. Her wolf didn't just flutter this time, it slammed like a fist against her ribcage, demanding existence. Anthony's nostrils flared. He addressed Theon, voice low and resonant. "We need to talk about your alliance's long-term implications." Of course. Theon gestured to chairs. Shall we sit? Anthony remained standing. A silent power standoff. Theon's smile tightened. Seraphina stood between them, heart knocking. Anthony's gaze flicked to her again. His eyes shone gold for an instant, wolf at the surface. He exhaled through his nose, clearly fighting some inner reaction. Seraphina's breath caught. It felt like the room narrowed until only the two of them remained, drawn together by a law older than anything carved on stone. Theon cleared his throat. My Luna will observe quietly. He clasped her elbow, subtle possessive squeeze. Anthony's jaw twitched at the contact. He turned to the hologram, voice even. Bloodthorn's new timber routes intersect existing royal shipping lanes. I expect full transparency. Transparency is guaranteed, Theon said, stepping to the table. Our contracts. Suddenly the chamber doors groaned open. An elderly woman stepped through, cloaked in deep violet, silver hair braided with tiny bones. Guards reached for weapons but froze when Anthony lifted a hand. Theon's eyes flashed. Who allowed entry? The woman's gaze pinned Seraphina. Ancient, knowing, unfathomably gentle. The moon moves unseen by guards, she said, voice like wind through pines. She walked forward, ignoring Theon's sputter. Child, your spirit bleeds, she said to Seraphina. Yet your blood sings a prophecy. Seraphina's voice trembled. Who are you? Shaman Isara of the Old Crescent, Anthony said quietly. My spiritual advisor. Isara inclined her head. The threads of fate tangle tonight. You two are woven by starlight, bound before birth. Theon stepped between Isara and Seraphina. Enough riddles. Leave. Isara's eyes sparkled. You cannot hold what was never yours, Alpha. She touched Seraphina's wrist lightly. A spark flared, a shockwave through flesh and bone. Seraphina gasped. The silent wolf inside her roared, a soundless quake. She swayed, vision white-hot for a heartbeat. When clarity returned, Isara was already backing away. Anthony's fist clenched at his sides. Isara, he warned, but his own voice shook faintly. Isara smiled. Truth will find its voice. She turned and walked out, cloak brushing marble. Guards parted, unsettled. Theon rounded on Seraphina, eyes blazing. What did she do? I don't know, Seraphina stammered, pulse drumming in her temples. Anthony addressed her directly, voice low. Did she hurt you? Theon snapped. Address me, not my Luna, your majesty. Anthony's eyes remained on Seraphina. Are you hurt? She swallowed. No. Anthony exhaled, tension unspooling a fraction. He turned to Theon. Your alliance encroaches royal lands. We'll renegotiate terms in 1 month. Until then, cease expansion. Theon bristled. I won't be dictated to. That was not a request, Anthony said, each word forged of iron. 1 month. He gestured to his beta. They turned to leave. Theon's face reddened. This meeting is far from over. Anthony paused at the doors, half turning. Indeed. But tonight, we are finished. His gaze brushed Seraphina once more, softening something cold behind gold irises. Then he walked out. Doors closed. Theon's fury burst free in the sudden silence. He grabbed Seraphina's arm so hard she winced. You let that witch touch you. I had no choice, she whispered. You always have a choice, he snarled. Choose me. Her heart hammered. Choose. The word tangled on her tongue. He released her, pacing like a caged predator. Go to your room. Tomorrow we begin remedying this humiliation. His gaze burned. We forge the full mate bond, seal our fate, and erase these distractions. Her stomach twisted. You can't force. His eyes glittered. Watch me. He stalked from the chamber, boots echoing down the corridor. Seraphina stood alone, breath shaky, the map table casting blue light across her dress. She pressed a hand to her chest. Inside, Her wolf was no longer silent. It paced, restless, sensing a door in the darkness. Cassandra slipped in, eyes wide. I couldn't get close, guards. What happened? Seraphina's lips parted, but words failed. Instead, a whisper floated out, barely audible. He saw me. Cassandra frowned. Who? The Lycan king. Tears slipped down Seraphina's cheeks. And now I can't unsee him. Cassandra led Seraphina back to the suite like a lighthouse through fog, steady and quiet. The corridor lights dimmed on night cycle, casting everything in cool blue. When the door shut behind them, the fortress hum softened to a low purr. Cassandra crossed to the kitchenette, filled a glass with water, and pressed it into Seraphina's hands. You're shaking, Cassandra said. I feel like I swallowed thunder, Seraphina whispered. She set the glass down and pressed her palm to her sternum. The warmth inside had become a pulse, not constant, but insistent, beating in a rhythm that was not entirely her own. I don't know what's happening to me. Cassandra's eyes searched her face. I have a guess. You locked eyes with him and everything changed. Seraphina's throat tightened around the memory. It felt like a hook, like something reached into me and pulled, and for a moment I wasn't afraid. That's what they say about fated bonds. Cassandra's voice was gentle but firm. It's not just scent or sight. It's recognition at the marrow. You didn't do anything wrong. But I'm married to Theon. The word felt like a collar clicking shut. This is impossible. The world doesn't ask permission to be complicated, Cassandra said. She took Seraphina's hands, the contact anchoring. For now, breathe, drink, sit. She guided her to the sofa. Do you want me to stay? Seraphina nodded, grateful. They sat in companionable silence except for the clock's soft tick. After a while, Seraphina found words. Isara touched me. It felt like she lit a match in a cavern. I saw her leave the wing, Cassandra said. Half the guards made the sign against witchcraft. The other half tried not to look fascinated. A faint curve touched her mouth. She has a reputation for being right in the ways that make alphas uncomfortable. Seraphina let out a breath that was almost a laugh. That seems to be her talent. Cassandra squeezed her hand once more, then stood. Shower, change into something soft. I'll wait right here and make tea. She hesitated at the door to the bath. And if you feel your heart racing too fast or you get dizzy, call me immediately. Why? Because a bond awakening can strain a dormant wolf. Your body hasn't carried that energy before. Seraphina nodded and moved into the bathroom. Steam fogged the mirror within minutes, blurring the bruises and the new crown lines pressed into her scalp. She stood under water that ran just shy of hot, letting the pressure knot at her shoulders and then release. Eyes closed, she reached inward again. Are you there? The silence answered differently now. Not with emptiness, but with the sense of a presence just beyond a thin wall. Heat spread from her chest to her fingertips, tingling. Her breath hitched. She thought she felt a brush of fur where there was only skin, a flick of a tail at the edge of her awareness. The sensation vanished like a shy animal darting behind trees. She exhaled, a sound that was half sob, half relief. Wrapped in a robe, she returned to find Cassandra on the sofa with 2 steaming mugs. They drank tea, the floral notes unclenching a knot behind Seraphina's ribs. When fatigue pulled at her eyelids, Cassandra stood. I'll sleep on the chaise, Cassandra said, already moving a pillow to the long window seat. You're not alone. Seraphina wanted to protest. Instead, she whispered, Thank you. She changed into a soft t-shirt and cotton shorts, climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling. The suite was quiet except for the murmur of the city far below and the faint click of the HVAC. The invisible tether that connected her to Anthony hummed like a power line in winter. She turned to her side, curled around the ache and the warmth, and finally drifted. Across the fortress, in a private lounge lit only by a single-floor lamp, Anthony stood with both hands braced on a table, head bowed. The room smelled of citrus oil and old books. His beta, ash-blonde hair neatly combed, tie loosened, stood a few paces away, saying nothing until silence grew heavy. "Say it," Anthony murmured without lifting his head. The beta cleared his throat. "You walked out in front of every alpha on the eastern seaboard." "I know. And you did it because the new Luna looked at you like the moon had found her." Anthony lifted his head. Golden irises flashed, then cooled to topaz. "It wasn't her looking that did it." His jaw worked, a muscle jumping. "It was what happened to me." The beta nodded slowly. "Name it." "My wolf did." Anthony's mouth twisted in something like disbelief and surrender. "Aurelian woke the moment our eyes met." The beta exhaled, letting the name settle in the air. "After all these years?" Aurelian's voice rolled through Anthony's mind, molten and impatient. "Mine. She is ours. Go back. Claim." Anthony shut his eyes briefly and the internal landscape brightened. He saw flashes, a forest under snow, the gleam of a river, a dark-haired woman standing in a field of poppies with her face turned toward him. Aurelian paced within, all muscle and gold, energy contained with difficulty. "We will not take what is not free to be given," Anthony told him. "She calls. She smells like winter sunrise." Aurelian's growl softened to a rumble of longing. "The other male reeks of iron and smoke. He harms her." Anthony's hand curled into a fist on the table edge. He had smelled it too, beneath perfume and powder. The sterile sting of antiseptic, and the copper ghost of old blood. Rage sharpened behind his sternum, but he forced the blade to remain sheathed. "We will protect her," he told the wolf, "but not like thieves." He opened his eyes and found the beta watching him carefully. "Dorian," Anthony said, calling the beta by name. "Theon will try to seal the bond to cover his fear." Dorian nodded once. "He'll move quickly. He knows he can't match you in open challenge, so he'll fortify what he believes he already owns." Aurelian snorted in disdain. The echo reverberated in Anthony's bones. "Post 2 royal observers on the Bloodthorn wing," Anthony said. "Discreet but visible. If Theon attempts a violation of royal decree, they report to me immediately." "Under what pretext?" Dorian asked. "The safety of visiting royalty," Anthony said. "And the safety of a newly crowned Luna whose alliance touches royal lanes." He rubbed his temple. The image of Seraphina's face had imprinted on his vision, as stubborn as an after-image from staring at the sun. Not just beauty, fragility wrapped around a core that refused to fracture. He had felt it in her speech, the way she built a promise out of silence. Dorian studied him. "Do you want me to contact Isara?" "She's already 3 steps ahead," Anthony said. As if summoned, a soft knock sounded. The door opened and Isara slipped inside, violet cloak trailing, silver hair glowing in lamplight. She did not bow. She did not need to. "You left her with a promise you didn't speak," Isara said, voice low. "The body hears what the mouth won't say." Anthony straightened. "What did you do when you touched her?" "Opened a window," Isara said. "Her wolf has been hiding in a room without doors. The window gives light." Dorian frowned. "Is that safe?" Isara's eyes softened. "It is necessary. Dormancy born of terror is a coma of the soul. She needs love and time, not commands." She turned to Anthony. "And you need patience. If you claim in anger, you mirror the man who hurt her." "I won't claim without her consent," Anthony said. The words felt like iron in his mouth, both burden and oath. "Good," Isara said. "Then remember, consent is not simply a nod in a chapel. It is the body sighing yes, the spirit leaning forward. Wait for that." She moved toward the door. "Theon will try to force what the moon did not grant him." Her gaze sharpened. "Royal law forbids coercion of the mate bond." "Then he risks my hand if he tries," Anthony replied, voice gone quiet and lethal. Isara touched the doorframe, listening to something only she could hear. Her heart just calmed. Your name sits on her tongue in sleep. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Interesting. After she left, Dorian exhaled. Do I ready the convoy in case we need to extract? Not yet, Anthony said, but be ready to move quietly. He looked down at his hands that had signed peace accords and held dying warriors and never trembled. Now his fingers shook. He closed them into fists until they stilled. I won't lose her to a contract. In another wing, Theon paced his office with wolf-quick strides, tie loosened, eyes flashing green whenever his control slipped. Alaric stood near the window, hands folded behind his back, face kept neutral by long practice. You saw it, Theon snapped. Oh, you saw the way he looked at her. I saw a king who felt something and didn't like it, Alaric replied carefully. It rattled him. It can rattle him from a continent away, Theon said. Here, it threatens this alliance. Alaric waited, letting Theon burn off the first flare of rage. What do you want me to do? Double security around her suite. Disable guest access to the Luna level. Theon stalked to his desk and stabbed a finger at the intercom. Get Dr. Valen. A few minutes later, Valen entered carrying a data slate. He took in the taut lines of Theon's body and the way Alaric's jaw was set, and shifted his tone to precise professionalism. You called Alpha. Theon leaned on the desk. I want suppressants. Valen's eyes chilled. For what exactly? The bond, Theon said. If there's the faintest chance that King's scent or presence could push her into believing she belongs to him, I want it damped. She will not go soft in public when he passes by. Valen's mouth flattened. Bond suppressants blunt a wolf's instincts. They were designed for triage, not politics. Side effects include dissociation, migraines, nausea, irregular heartbeat, in rare cases, seizures. She's already dissociated half her life, Theon snapped. She'll manage. I'm her physician, Valen said quietly, not your enforcer. Theon's smile was all teeth. You're both if you want to keep your lab funded. Prepare a nasal dose. Low level. If I tell you to administer, you will. Valen's gaze slid to Alaric, who did not look away but did not intervene. I'll prepare it, Valen said at last, voice stiff with dislike. But I recommend against use unless medical necessity demands it. Your recommendations are noted, Theon said, dismissing him with a flick of his hand. When the doctor left, Theon turned to Alaric. Schedule a ritual supper for Dawn 2 days from now. Small, private. I will move her toward acceptance. Meaning? Alaric asked, though he already knew. Meaning I begin what the moon refused me, Theon said. His eyes flashed again, wolf surging near the skin. Inside him, Vargos snarled approval, claws scoring along the edges of Theon's self-control. Take. Mark. Make her yours. Alaric's voice stayed calm. Royal observers are in the wing. Let them watch, Theon said. I won't break laws. I'll persuade. He smiled a slow, reptilian smile. Everyone yields to something. Alaric's gaze tightened. If you push too hard, you'll snap the wire and lose everything. Theon stepped close. You've served me long enough to know I don't snap wires. I play whole orchestras. He straightened his cuffs. Send guards to the Luna's door. Alaric bowed his head, then left. In the hallway, he paused and let his composure slip just enough to press thumb and forefinger to his eyes. He had seen good men turn to flint in the presence of fear. He wasn't sure Theon counted as a good man anymore. He moved because duty demanded motion, and because Seraphina had no defenders left, but those who found small ways to slow storms. Inside the suite, Cassandra woke to the soft whir of the door scanner engaging. She rose from the chaise and peered through the peephole. 2 guards took positions like statues. She wrote a quick message on her tablet and slid it beneath Seraphina's door. When Seraphina stirred and sat up, blinking, Cassandra was already there, tapping gently. Sorry, Cassandra said. Didn't mean to wake you. Security changed. Theon's got guards on the door now. Seraphina's heartbeat sped. Am I a prisoner? You're a Luna, Cassandra said dryly, which often amounts to the same thing. Serafina bit her lip, then lifted the note and read Cassandra's second line. Valen was summoned. Suppressants, a possibility. I'll try to intercept. The room tilted half a degree. He wants to drug me, Serafina whispered. Maybe, Cassandra said. Valen protested. He'll hesitate, but be prepared. If anyone you don't know offers you a drink, food, or a spray near your face, refuse. I'll shadow your schedule. Serafina nodded, throat tight. I hate that I'm grateful for a cage because it keeps him from walking in. We'll replace the locks on your mind with something else, Cassandra said. Routines you choose. People who help. She hesitated, then reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. A woman in the elevator pressed this into my hand. Said it belonged to you. Serafina unwrapped the cloth. A small pendant lay inside, a sliver of white stone threaded on a thin silver chain, carved into a crescent. It felt cool and somehow warm at once, like water warmed by sun after sitting in shade. Isara, Serafina breathed. She lifted the chain over her head. The pendant settled against her skin with the weight of a promise. The warmth inside her chest flared, gentle and steady. Keep it hidden, Cassandra advised. No need to give Theon one more thing to confiscate. Serafina tucked the pendant beneath her shirt. She closed her eyes and reached for the new heat. This time the presence inside pressed back. Not words, not yet, but a sense like a head lifting, ears pricking. She exhaled on a shaky laugh. What? Cassandra asked. She listened, Serafina said. She's there. Cassandra smiled outright, lines around her eyes deepening with relief. Good. Then we move carefully, and we move forward. The rest of the night stretched and nodded. Serafina drifted in and out of shallow sleep on the sofa, while Cassandra drafted a schedule that placed herself or Valen near Serafina at every turn. Outside the door, guards shifted weight every hour, boots whispering on carpet. Twice a patrol passed with the soft clink of armor. The city's nocturne rose and fell. Near dawn, a text pinged on Cassandra's tablet. She glanced at it and swore under her breath. What? Serafina asked, pushing herself upright. Royal observers posted on your floor, Cassandra said, showing her the discreet notice from security. That's a blessing and a warning. Theon will be on edge. Are they spies? Serafina asked. Witnesses, Cassandra said. The Crown likes receipts. She set the tablet down. I'll make coffee. Serafina moved to the window, the world outside fading from inky blue to soft lavender. In the glass, she saw her reflection superimposed on the city. Messy ponytail, bruised throat, the hint of a pendant's chain glinting at her collar. She looked both breakable and lit from within, and for a moment, she believed the latter might one day eclipse the former. A knock sounded. Cassandra stiffened, then checked the peephole. She relaxed a fraction and opened the door to reveal Dr. Valen, coat immaculate, eyes weary. I have something for you, Valen said, stepping inside. He held up 2 small vials. Electrolyte solution with B vitamins. You'll need stamina if they insist on parading you again today. Serafina accepted one wary. Valen understood and uncapped his own, taking a healthy swallow. Not a trap, he said dryly. If I were poisoning you, I'd choose better packaging. Did Theon ask you to bring anything else? Cassandra asked, plain and direct. Valen's mouth thinned. He asked for suppressants in reserve. I declined to bring them unless I assess medical necessity. I left them in my lab. Thank you, Cassandra said. I didn't do it for gratitude, Valen said. His gaze softened on Serafina. I did it because the right thing is occasionally still possible. He glanced at the door. Also, for your awareness, 2 royal observers are stationed at either end of the corridor. If anything concerns you, raise your voice. After he left, Serafina and Cassandra exchanged a look that contained more hope than either was ready to voice aloud. Seraphina sipped the electrolyte, the sour sweet hit waking her tongue and mind. She showered again, put on a simple day dress, and braided her hair with quick, deft fingers that had learned to make order out of chaos. By the time morning fully arrived, the fortress stirred. Breakfast trays rattled down hallways. Drones lifted from their docking stations and buzzed toward perimeter checks. Cassandra adjusted a schedule block to include a 30-minute stop in the greenhouse. She sent it to Theon's office with diplomatic phrasing. The reply came back moments later. Approved. Escort required. Small victories, Cassandra said. On his way to the garage, Theon scanned overnight reports on his phone. The convoy for the Lycan king remained on site. Royal observers stationed. Alaric's security rotation updated. He pocketed the device and stepped into the elevator. His reflection stared back at him from the mirrored walls, handsome and tired and something else he didn't like to name. Jealousy looked ugly on a man who prized control. Vargos prowled in his skull, restless and irritated. The old wolf's voice scratched like thorn branches. The king smells like sun on stone. He thinks he can take. We take first. We hold what we've built. Theon answered, jaw tightening. He knew that voice too well to mistake it for wisdom. Hunger wore many faces. He straightened his shoulders. We do this my way, he said aloud to the empty elevator, and the doors opened on a hallway that smelled faintly of orchids and risk. Anthony stood at the far end of the royal wing corridor, looking like he'd stepped out of a storm and brought its hush with him. He wasn't supposed to be there. He had left the lounge before dawn, haunted by the sense that putting floors between himself and Seraphina would not quiet Aurelian enough to let him sleep. He told himself he was checking on security. He told himself he was measuring the fortress's weaknesses. He told himself many things, most of them true, and all of them insufficient. A royal observer saluted. Anthony nodded, then turned to the window where glass reflected a sliver of a room 2 doors down. He could not see her, but he felt the quiver in the tether, a gentle tug as if the current ran between them and any movement on one end sent ripples to the other. We should leave, Aurelian said without conviction. Standing outside a door will not change fate. It changes nothing, Anthony agreed, and yet he did not move. He stood there in silence until his phone buzzed with a message from Dorian. The words were simple. Theon will try to rush a private ritual. Isara says patience. Be ready. He slid the phone back into his pocket. Patience had never felt like such a violent act. Inside the suite, Seraphina sat at the vanity, untwisting the braid she'd just woven because her fingers wanted the comfort of doing it again. She glanced at the clock. Morning, then afternoon, and by nightfall the ceremony would be a story told in 100 versions. Some would speak of the gown. Some would gossip about the king's exit. Very few would mention the girl's eyes when she said she would rise from silence. Cassandra checked her watch. Greenhouse in 5? She asked. Yes, Seraphina said. She lifted the pendant from beneath her shirt and let it rest against her palm. It was warm now, as if it remembered the press of Isara's hand. She closed her fist around it and thought of poppies and snow and a pair of golden eyes that had looked at her like she was not a symbol or a transaction, but a person the world had been waiting for. The warmth inside her chest answered deeper and steadier than before. Not a voice. Not yet. But a promise that felt very close to one. Cassandra guided Seraphina to the rooftop greenhouse just after midday. Warm glass filtered winter sun onto rows of fragrant herbs and orchids. Guards waited at each exit, but among the leaves and loamy air, Seraphina felt the first pocket of calm since the ceremony. She brushed lavender with her fingertips, inhaling the clean, pine-sweet scent. 5 minutes, one guard warned. Cassandra arched a brow and turned away so he wouldn't see her roll her eyes. Touch everything quickly, she murmured. Seraphina smiled. In the shade of a blooming lemon tree, she opened her fist, letting the pendant catch a ray of light. Heat spread from stone to skin. Inside, her wolf stirred again. Not a jolt this time, but a slow awakening like someone stretching after a long sleep. A fragile sense of gratitude washed through her. Hers, and not hers alone. The door clicked. Theon entered, crisp in slate gray, Alaric at his heel. His gaze swept the greenery, landing on the pendant before Seraphina could tuck it away. Something predatory flashed in his eyes. "We leave," he said. "Preparations begin tonight. Dawn ritual, private chapel. Your acceptance will be public within 3 days." Cassandra stepped forward. "Alpha Royal Observers need 48 hours notice for any ritual involving the Luna. Then they'll observe." Theon offered his hand to Seraphina. Command, not invitation. She slipped the pendant under her collar and let him lead her out. Afternoon dissolved in fittings and rehearsals for a dawn vow Seraphina wanted no part of. Valen checked her vitals, subtle frown deepening when he noted elevated pulse. He said nothing while Theon stood nearby, but pressed a mint-scented salve into her palm as she left. "For headaches," he mouthed. Twilight draped the city in copper. Guards escorted Seraphina back to her suite. Royal observers nodded as she passed. Cassandra waited inside, eyes bright with unspoken worry. "He means to bind you at dawn," she said. "I know." Seraphina traced the pendant through her dress. "But the moon still moves." Night settled. Cassandra slept on the chaise again, tablet close. Seraphina lay awake until stars pricked the sky, then drifted into dream. She stood on a silver plain beneath a vast pale moon. Wind rippled black hair across her face. Ahead, a figure approached. Tall, regal, golden-eyed. Anthony stopped an arm's length away, gaze gentle and fierce all at once. No words passed, yet she sensed his vow. "I will not let him break you." Behind him, a great wolf of burnished gold paced, eyes matching his own. The tether between them pulsed like a heartbeat neither could silence. Her dormant wolf stepped from shadow beside her, sleek, dark, eyes newly bright. When their shoulders touched, electricity surged, and both wolves threw back their heads, releasing a single, silent howl that echoed across the plain. Seraphina woke before dawn, tears cooling on her cheeks, moonlight fading from the window. Her pulse thrummed with quiet certainty. She pressed fingers to the pendant and whispered the only truth that mattered. "He saw me." Seraphina surfaced from sleep at the first tug of dawn, heart pounding as if she'd been running. The dream clung to her lashes, a moon-washed plain, frost glittering like crushed diamonds, and Anthony standing beside a great golden wolf that paced with eyes brighter than starfire. In the dream, she'd reached for him without fear, but the horizon had split apart, dragging them to opposite sides like magnets torn loose. She blinked up at the vaulted ceiling of her suite, breathing hard. The sheets stuck to her skin, damp with sweat though the room was cool. She rolled onto her side and pressed trembling fingers to the hollow of her throat. The pulse there felt hotter than her own blood, a new warmth that hummed like a distant engine. Something inside her answered the thrum. It didn't form words, but it wasn't silence either, more the weighty hush before thunder. She whispered, "Naira," testing the name that had whispered through her dream, and felt the hush ripple with recognition. The room still shimmered with early light, soft gray veils spilling across the windows. She threw back the covers and stood, legs shaky, but strong enough to hold her. When she crossed to the mirror, breath fogged the glass though no heat source stood nearby. She scrubbed a palm across the misted surface until her reflection cleared. Bruises dotted her collarbone where Theon's fingers had dug in the night before. A faint bite mark lurked beneath concealer. Yet beneath the blemishes, her eyes looked brighter, irises ringed with a silver edge that hadn't been there yesterday. A knock tapped at the adjoining door. "Sarah, may I come in?" Cassandra's voice was low, urgent. "Come." Cassandra slipped inside carrying a tray of coffee and sliced fruit. Her gaze flicked to the fogged mirror. "Windows closed and still steaming? Interesting." It was like that when I woke, Serafina lied, wiping a second smear from the glass. Probably humidity. Cassandra set the tray down and stepped close. Or your power flickering to life. Serafina's laugh came out thin. I have no power. You survived last night on raw will. Cassandra glanced toward the door. You're different this morning. Serafina admitted it in a whisper. I feel something waking. It's small, but it's there. Cassandra touched her arm gentle. Hold on to that. Theon's in meetings until noon. Eat, shower, breathe. I'll keep watch. I dreamed of Anthony, Serafina said before she could stop herself. And I wasn't afraid. He's your mate by every sign that matters, Cassandra answered, tone even. Fear isn't what bonds create, but Theon will do anything to sever that link. Serafina picked up a slice of mango and nibbled. Sweetness flooded her dry mouth. He'll try to bind me again soon. Let's worry about each minute as it comes. Cassandra poured coffee, steam curling between them. Drink. Then we'll plan. While she ate, tiny anomalies stirred. A candle on the mantel sparked, even though its wick was unlit. A single petal drifted from a vase of lilies and twirled in an invisible eddy of air. Cassandra raised a brow each time but said nothing, just scribbled notes on her digital pad. Mirror fog, air swirl, spontaneous static. Serafina showered, letting water pound knots from her shoulders. When she toweled off, the bathroom mirror fogged again without steam. She drew a tiny crescent moon in the condensation with her fingertip, then wiped it away before dressing in a simple slate blue dress that hid last night's bruises. She stepped back into the bedroom as Cassandra finished a call. Theon is delayed with the Timber Guild. You have 2 quiet hours. What will you do with them? I'll send security requests for more female staff near your wing. Harder for Theon's bruisers to corner you alone. Cassandra hesitated. Valen asked to examine your injuries later. Let him, Serafina said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. I'm done hiding bruises for Theon's pride. They shared a look that felt like the first stone in a foundation. Cassandra left to liaise with staff. Serafina wandered to the balcony. Frost rimmed the rail, catching sunlight like fragile lace. She touched the cold metal and felt warmth bloom beneath her palm until a bead of water slid free. She jerked back. The rail steamed where her skin had touched. Naira? The thought wasn't quite words, more a pulse of inquiry. The hush stirred in her chest, soft as a sigh. Down in the courtyard, black sedans idled as dignitaries departed. One car bore the Lycan royal crest, a silver wolf head encircled by crescent moons. The sight jolted her. She imagined Anthony inside, golden eyes unreadable, jaw tight with duty. A shiver traced her spine, half yearning, half dread. Miles away in a granite-fronted embassy, Anthony sat at a conference table with Isara and his beta, Dorian. The shaman's violet cloak pooled around her ankles like dusk itself. She poured tea into 3 delicate cups etched with ancient runes, then folded her hands, waiting for Anthony to speak. He stared at the dark liquid, fighting the urge to pace. Tell me I'm wrong, he said finally. Tell me what I felt last night was a trick of the goddess. Isara's eyes glimmered like candle flames. The goddess does not trick, she reveals. Dorian leaned forward, elbows on the table. We need clarity, Isara. The king hasn't slept. His wolf claws at him. Kalis rumbled agreement inside Anthony's mind. She bleeds. Bring her here. Keep her safe. Anthony exhaled through his nose. Every instinct says go to her, but I won't act on instinct alone. Isara sipped tea, then set the cup down. The woman is your mate. Her wolf is bound, not absent. Trauma locked her spirit in silence. Your presence cracked the seal. Anthony closed his eyes. The memory of Serafina's speech, quiet but unyielding, flashed behind his lids. If I press, I become the tyrant she already endures. Not press, Isara said. Stand, offer shelter, wolves come to warmth. Warmth is not enough against Theon, Anthony replied. He would rather burn the house than see her walk free. Dorian's voice softened. Then we prepare for ashes and rebuild. Kalis growled approval. Anthony opened his eyes. What happens if her wolf wakes while tethered to him? She will fracture or fight, Isara said. Better the second, but fighting a bond forged in cruelty takes strength she doesn't yet believe she has. You can lend her that belief. Anthony's fists curled on the table. How? Isara smiled faintly. Ask her if she is safe, and listen when she lies. Anthony met her gaze. Arrange a private audience, formal. Treaty law gives me that right. Dorian pulled a tablet from his jacket. I'll deliver the request within the hour. Kalis murmured satisfaction. Good, close, protect. Anthony lifted his cup but didn't drink. He looked out the tall embassy window toward Bloodthorn's distant towers. Pray the moon keeps her until I can. Back in Seraphina's suite, Cassandra returned with news. The Lycan embassy just contacted Theon's office. Anthony demands a private audience tomorrow night. Seraphina's pulse skipped. Tomorrow. Treaty law means Theon can't refuse without breaching protocol, Cassandra said. He'll spin it as business. Seraphina pressed a hand to the balcony rail again. Frost melted in a halo beneath her palm. What if Theon punishes me before then? Then we hold the pieces together until help arrives, Cassandra said firmly. Valen will be here in 30 minutes. I'll stay while he treats you. Seraphina nodded, drawing courage from her attendant's steadiness. They spent the next half hour reviewing schedules, mapping safe corridors, arranging for a second set of eyes whenever Seraphina left her wing. Valen arrived with a slim med case and a polite nod to Cassandra. Alpha's orders were a cursory check, but I brought everything I need for real care if permitted. Please, Seraphina said, sitting on the edge of the sofa. She unfastened the top button of her dress to expose the fading bite mark. Valen's lips compressed. He scanned the wound with a handheld light. The tissue rejected the intended bond, he murmured. Rare, but it happens when the soul refuses. Cassandra glanced at Seraphina, who felt a spark of vindication. Will it scar? Superficially, perhaps. Deeper rejection may leave nerve flare, brief flashes of pain, like phantom fire. Valen unwrapped a sterile patch and smoothed it over the mark. A cooling numbness spread. This will soothe. As he worked, he asked gentle questions about dizziness, nausea, muscle spasms. She answered honestly. Cassandra hovered close, arms folded like a guard dog in business attire. Valen cleaned bruised knees, applied salve to her knuckles, none of which she'd felt until he touched them. When he finished, he sat back on his heels. You have remarkable resilience, Lady Voss. My name is Seraphina, she said quietly. And resilience is just another word for not dying. Valen's gaze warmed with something like respect. Not dying can be a first step to living. He packed his kit, stood, and bowed. I'll log the visit as standard protocol. Get rest. After he left, Cassandra helped Seraphina into a fresh dress and braided her hair into a crown to hide the patch. Noon bells chimed. Heavy steps echoed in the hallway. Theon returning. Seraphina's heartbeat quickened, but for the first time, did not sprint into panic. The door opened. Theon strode in, coat already off, shirt sleeves rolled. His eyes swept the room, landing on Cassandra. Out. Cassandra bristled but dipped her head. As you wish, Alpha. She caught Seraphina's gaze on her way out, silent promise blazing in her eyes. The door shut softly. Theon moved closer, scent sharp as pine smoke. How is my Luna today, he asked, voice wrapped in velvet but stiff with tension. Recovering, Seraphina replied. Your meetings went well? He dropped into an armchair opposite her. They went. Everyone talks about the Lycan King's exit. They think you bewitched him. She folded her hands in her lap, nails pressing crescents into her palms. Do they? Yes, Theon said. If they fear your influence, we use it. He leaned forward. Tomorrow, you will meet him again. Smile, apologize for any misunderstanding, and ensure he knows you belong here. Seraphina's throat tightened. Belong is a strong word. Theon's smile thinned. You sealed that word when you said I do. He stood, turning away as if bored. Rest. Practice your smile. I'll fetch you for supper. He left without touching her, but his presence lingered like smoke. She exhaled shakily. In the quiet, a candle flame on the mantel jumped higher, then steadied. Naira? She closed her eyes. The hush inside stirred, feather light but sure. She didn't force it, just breathed, until the warmth settled into her bones. Cassandra slipped back in minutes later. He's headed to the courtyard. You're clear for half an hour. Seraphina nodded, pulling the pendant from beneath her dress. It glowed faintly in the muted light. She turned it over in her fingers and whispered, "The wolf that waits is not lost." The phrase felt like armor sliding into place. That came from Ysara, didn't it? Cassandra asked softly. She's the one who opened the window, Seraphina said. Her lips curved into a small, true smile. Now the wind is coming through. The afternoon haze settled over Bloodthorn Fortress like a heavy lid, stirring memories of summer storms that broke without warning. In the royal embassy 2 miles away, Anthony paced a polished obsidian corridor lined with stained glass windows. Sunshot colors crawled over his black suit with every stride, but he barely noticed. Kalis grumbled in his mind, restless as a caged lion. You move in circles, Kalis said. Go to her. Anthony forced his shoulders back. We do this by law, not impulse. Law left her bruised. The wolf's voice vibrated like iron struck on stone. She tastes of broken things. Let her taste safety. Anthony rounded a corner and entered a small tactical room where Dorian stood at a console, holo maps floating before him. The beta lifted his head. Message delivered. Bloodthorn acknowledged your audience request for tomorrow at 2000 hours, Dorian said. No conditions listed. Theon must be planning a show of cooperation. Anthony folded his arms. Or a trap. Either way, we'll control the space. I'll sweep the chamber myself an hour before. Dorian hesitated. And you, sire? Will you hold the bond in check? You walked out once. The next breach could start a war. Anthony's jaw flexed. She is not a breach to be mended. She's a person to be protected. Kalis let out an approving growl. Dorian gave a faint nod. Ysara plans to accompany us. She'll remain outside. Her presence unsettles Theon. Anthony exhaled. It unsettles me how much that pleases her. Dorian's mouth twitched. She does enjoy shaking thrones. He keyed a final command, closing the map. We drill entry protocols at 1700. Good. Anthony turned to leave, then paused. Thank you, old friend. For what? For believing me when I said the world shifted last night. Dorian's expression softened. I felt the tremor too, sire. He laid a fist over his heart. We stand with you. Anthony inclined his head and strode out, Kalis finally falling silent, content with forward motion. Back at Bloodthorn, Seraphina's half-hour of calm ended when a trio of guards arrived to escort her to Theon's private council room. Cassandra walked beside her, tablet in hand, as if notes could shield either of them. Do you know why he wants me? Seraphina murmured as they paced marble corridors. He called an emergency meeting with Ashwood's trade envoy, Cassandra whispered. My guess, he wants you there to prove you're compliant. They stopped outside oak double doors carved with snarling wolves. The captain of the guard announced them. The doors swung inward. The room smelled of cigars and tension. Theon stood at the head of a long, dark table, flanked by Alaric and 3 suited men bearing Ashwood crests. Papers and digital tablets littered the surface. An empty chair waited at Theon's right, a cushion on the floor beside it. Seraphina's stomach dropped. Theon gestured to the cushion without looking at her. "Kneel by my side." Her pulse hammered. Cassandra started to step forward, but Seraphina caught her wrist with a silent plea. "It will only worsen if you intervene." Cassandra's jaw worked, but she retreated to the back wall. Seraphina moved to the cushion and folded her legs beneath her skirt. Pain flared in bruised knees. She kept her spine straight, refusing to hunch like a scolded child. The Ashwood envoy exchanged glances. Smug, curious, faintly apologetic, she couldn't tell. Theon began outlining trade percentages, his tone smooth. "Bloodthorn will handle shipping logistics. Ashwood provides raw timber. Seraphina will oversee our combined charity wing, ensuring optical goodwill." He rested a hand on her crownless head. The pressure felt like a brand. "One note," said Envoy Herrick, a stout man with shrewd eyes. "Ashwood's council wonders if your Luna's strengths might be better used on diplomatic tours." Her speech last night generated interest. Theon's smile chilled the room. "My wife's strength is here, serving our household. Exposure can be unpredictable." Seraphina bit the inside of her cheek. Heat pulsed in her chest, an echo of Nyra bristling. A candle on the sideboard sputtered and flared taller. Herrick's eyes flicked toward the flame. Alaric cleared his throat, diffusing tension with numbers and graphs. Conversation trudged on. Each time Theon emphasized efficiency, his hand tightened in Seraphina's hair. By the 20th slide, her scalp burned. She closed her eyes and reached inward. "Nyra, I don't want to break." The hush inside quivered, like a heartbeat against hers. Not yet a voice, more a shared breath. Half an hour later, the meeting adjourned. The envoys filed out, murmuring farewell. When the door shut, Theon yanked Seraphina to her feet. Pain shot through her knees. "Stand straight," he snapped. "Did you enjoy your display of obedience?" She met his gaze, calm washing over fiery embarrassment. "If it served the Alliance." His eyes narrowed at her even tone. "We dine with the Raventhorn delegation tonight. You'll sit, not kneel. I'll decide later if you speak." He brushed a thumb across her lip as if wiping away invisible dirt, then strode out with Alaric. The guards followed. Cassandra hurried forward. "Can you walk?" "Yes." Seraphina straightened her skirt. Blood dotted the fabric at her knees. "I'm fine." That was humiliating, Cassandra muttered, fury sharpening each word. "But I didn't fall." Seraphina flexed her shoulders. "And I didn't cry." They returned to the suite. Valen appeared 10 minutes later with antiseptic and bandages. He knelt, dabbing gently at the raw skin. "He made you kneel again," Valen observed. "Symbolism is his favorite spice," Seraphina said dryly. Valen's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Keep the bandages on until tomorrow." He packed his kit but lingered. "I requested to accompany the audience with the Lycan King. Medical supervision soothes security fears." "Did Theon agree?" Cassandra asked. "He will." Valen's mild voice carried iron. "I filed it under Sovereignty Health Protocol." After he left, Seraphina sat at her vanity. Candlelight glimmered on glass. She opened a drawer to find her mother's locket. Leon had allowed her that keepsake, perhaps because sentimental value held no weight in trade deals. She clicked it open. The photo inside was nearly faded to smoke, but the smile was still there. A pang hit her chest. Nyra stirred, soft and sad. A knock sounded. Royal, courier. Cassandra accepted a parchment scroll sealed with silver wax. She unrolled it, eyes widening. "It's from the Lycan embassy, addressed to you personally." Seraphina's breath stuttered. She read the flowing script, formal wording, inviting her to discuss philanthropic collaboration before tomorrow night's audience, signed in Anthony's hand. Cassandra stared at her. He bypassed Theon's channels. "Maybe a courtesy copy went to Theon," Seraphina said, heart fluttering. "Or maybe he's gambling you'll receive it first." Cassandra folded the scroll. We'll hide this until I can gauge Theon's mood. Seraphina pressed the parchment to her chest. Heat passed through paper into skin. The hush stirred deeper, almost forming sound. She closed her eyes. Across the fortress, Theon entered a side office where Alaric waited beside a console. Theon poured whiskey into a tumbler. Do you think she bewitched Herrick? The man kept glancing at her like she was a prize stallion he'd lost in a bet. Alaric answered carefully. She spoke only once to greet them. Perhaps they're unused to seeing an Ashwood daughter obey without question. Theon drank, throat working. Tomorrow I grant an audience because I must. But after that, his wolf Vargos scraped claws inside. She signs the final bond or we find other uses. Royal observers remain, Alaric warned. Move slowly. Theon set his glass down hard. I will move precisely as I choose. He strode out, leaving the whiskey trembling. Evening bled across mauve skies. Seraphina donned a charcoal gown for the Raventhorn dinner. Long sleeves, modest neckline. Cassandra wove her hair into a sleek twist. Bandages hid beneath opaque stockings. Together they walked to the dining hall. Raventhorn's Alpha Chi greeted them, a wiry man with quicksilver eyes. His Luna, Elise, smiled warmly at Seraphina and patted the seat beside her. Theon stiffened, but allowed the placement. Dinner progressed with courses of roasted pheasant, candied beets, and honey-glazed almonds. Elise leaned close, whispering, "You handled that kneeling spectacle with grace." Seraphina kept her voice soft. "Grace feels heavy sometimes." "Weight builds muscle," Elise said, eyes gentle. "Even hearts have muscle." Across the table, Theon's gaze tightened at their hushed exchange. He shifted topics to border patrols, drawing Kai's attention. Elise slipped a small note into Seraphina's napkin. When Seraphina unfolded it later in the hall, it read, "Raventhorn stands with unions born of respect, not fear." Her fingers trembled, the first outside support that felt personal rather than political. She hid the note in her bodice. After guests left, Theon escorted Seraphina back toward the suite. His hand grazed the small of her back, deceptively gentle. "You whispered with Elise." "She offered compliments on the charity wing," Seraphina lied. "She's nosy," he muttered. At her door he paused. "Remember what obedience earns." He traced her jaw. "Tomorrow, perfect composure." "Yes, Alpha," she said, voice steady. Inside, Cassandra closed the door, sagging. "He didn't search you. I won't let fear steal every breath."